Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Meanwhile Here on Earth. This program features in-depth conversations with the leading names in the subjects of UFOs, abductees, the paranormal, panel discussions, and the very best and brightest of the next generation of writers and researchers. Meanwhile Here on Earth, the show breaking new ground in alternative talk with your intrepid host, veteran investigative writer and researcher, Peter Robbins.
And as the announcer said, Mr. Race Hobbs, we are back with Meanwhile Here on Earth. My name is Peter Robbins. I host this show. We broadcast on KGRA Digital Broadcasting. And to watch or listen live any week, go to kgradb.com at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Click on live stream at the top of the page and you are there. I wanted to start by saying this past week, I think it was a week ago, we had the conjunction of Jupiter and Venus making a presence in the sky. Not surprisingly, an accelerated number of UFO reports came in from people who could see this quite bright double phenomenon who were not aware of the conjunction of the planets. Now, take me, for example. I'm fairly knowledgeable on the subject of UFOs. Some people actually think I make sense when I speak. And in the great scheme of things, I was not aware of the conjunction of these planets and received a call from a neighbor about the lights, stepped outside and thought, whoa, what have we here? Heard from other neighbors, other ones went driving to see it from different angles. And for quite a number of minutes, I was quite sure I was having an authentic UFO sighting, which in my mind I was. And when it was done, I thought, isn't this interesting? That feeling for a few minutes of, what am I looking at? How are these things standing so still in the sky? I know now. Anyway, a cautionary tale there. Check the media when you see things in conjunction in the sky, and perhaps you'll find out they're more commonplace than you would have wished. Tonight's guest is Robert Young. Robert is an attorney, author, private pilot, and serious student of the UFO-UAP subject, who for about 10 years served as a judge pro tem in the Beverly Hills Municipal Court. Among other things, we're going to be talking about a remarkable journey Bob made across America in a two-seater airplane after life dealt him some tough cards to play. His just published book is titled Vagabond Pilot, A Journey of Discovery and Renewal. It recounts that life-changing journey and some of the memorable people he met along the way. Of particular interest to me, and perhaps some of you, are Bob's ideas regarding the Roswell incident from a lawyer's point of view, and we'll be covering considerably more. In the interest of full disclosure, and a side note worth mention, Robert Young and Peter Robbins knew each other from the time they were in elementary school. We grew up on the same street, 3 short blocks from each other, in the very quiet Long Island village of Rockville Center, New York. We had a number of friends in common, knew each other's families, and shared some of the same dreams of coming of age in that remarkable time and place. And Robert Young, it is a pleasure to welcome you to Meanwhile Here on Earth.
Thank you so much for having me, Peter. It's an honor to be on your show, sir. I really appreciate the kindness of inviting me in to speak about some things and share some memories with the host.
Well, it's my pleasure. And this is a bit surreal for both of us. We haven't seen each other in so many years. And, you know, we were just part
only
of
on Facebook, right?
Yeah. And we'll get on to it, but always curious how people reconnect through this miracle of social interactions that we have here electronically. Part of our life stories we could easily tell each other's, and it's almost ours. Were you born in Rockville Center, or did your folks move there when you were young?
Well, actually, I was born in Brooklyn, and 2 days after I was, we moved into the home in Rockville Center.
Wow.
I spent my whole childhood there.
I was born in Queens, and we moved to Rockville Center when I was 7 and Sister Helen was 5. And Sister Ann was about to be a human being sometime shortly after that. Again, this was such a different time, and it was so much more innocent. We were worldly in one sense. We grew up with educated families. We went to good schools. We grew up in a time when we could dream big and not aware of so much of the tumult and craziness of the world, except in the abstraction. Growing up, what are some of your earliest memories of Rockville Center and your family? Can you tell us a little about your family and some of your years?
Thank you. I was the third child of 4. Older brother, older sister, younger sister. Our sisters were in the same grade, I believe, right? Anne and Wendy.
Yep.
And my father was he became a very successful attorney in New York. He had an office on Court Street, and we could talk more about this, but his very first client was a guy named Fred Trump. And Fred and my father's partner was a very politically influential man, a fellow named Abraham Lindenbaum. And the firm was Lindenbaum and Young. Abe Lindenbaum was the city planning commissioner in New York under 3 sets of mayors, from Wagner, Lindsay, and Beam. So for about 25, 30 years, Dad and Abe did pretty well because, as my father said, and I shared the story, and as my father told me stories when I got older to appreciate them, he would say, well, this is how it worked in those days. You go down to City Hall and you take care of Bunny. That was Abe's name. And then you come back to Sydney and Brooklyn and I'll handle all the paperwork. And I said, Dad, what's that? He said, it's simple. You scratch my back, I scratch yours. That's the way it worked. We got by on handshakes, So anyway, it was very interesting. And of course, subsequent to that, as Dad and I got older and became friendly and not a son, that had to learn lessons and stuff. I met President Trump, not when he was president, but years before, and actually spoke with him. Very nice gentleman. So I was totally stunned by what I perceived was this Queens Democrat all of a sudden now. And I just thought that was his election shtick and he was going to move back to the middle. But anyway. So on Long Island, going back to Rockville Center, one of the things, and I've been back over the years that you will remember, was the street was this lovely street shaded by maple trees.
The maple trees and the blight that killed them all. That broke my heart.
And it was like this giant chuppah that went all the way, and it was just it went lovely, for miles. And we walked to school. I think the time was a very interesting time because it was post World War II when everybody was still together. I think in our lifetimes, the assassination of President Kennedy was kind of the beginning of the end.
What was left of our childhoods.
And the turbulent 60s when we were coming of age. But the education, everything was it was, as you said, an idyllic little village. And we had so much to offer. There was the state park right around the corner. It was great. It was very formative, to say the least.
Needless to say, our parents often set the tone for us for the rest of our lives. Either we embrace the model that they lived or purported to live, or we rebel against it for the rest of our life, or some complexity of going back and forth. Um, for me, growing up with you as a friendly acquaintance, because we never really played together. I was a couple of years older, and we knew each other. And for me, when I think back on you, and I see you primarily in my mind, either as a kid on the street or in junior high or high school, the one thing that defined you for me, it's just a very simple kind of memory, but was excelling. You really excelled academically and in sports. And it's funny, one of the pictures, one of the first we're going to show, shows you the school basketball team. And Paul Figueroa, who's on the team, remains a good friend of mine. I'm in touch with him very regularly.
Where is he?
He's retired in New Mexico. He was his career was as a museum curator, and who would have imagined? And a damn good one as well. But at a certain point, you started to have dreams about what you were going to do when you grew up. Again, because you really were serious about sports.
Well, that was in our family, that was kind of it. And I had this big brother who was bigger than life. And he was a terrific athlete. I followed him to Brown, and I wanted to be like him, because at those times, as a child, you see how much the father, adores this son who's excelling, and so I had to do the same, to get that love. I mean, there's a lot of dynamics that go on amongst children, but I headed out to California to break that sibling rivalry. I needed to, rather than go into my father's office after law school, I felt I needed to find me and come to California, and it's been a wonderful journey for me.
Do you feel, Bob, that your first thoughts about going into the law had to do with the fact that your dad was an attorney, or somehow that you had arrived at this independently enough that you really wanted to do it?
Not so much my father at first. I had a con law professor at Brown named Edward Beiser, who was also my advisor for my thesis I wrote on Harry Truman. And he made constitutional law come alive, that I was enthralled with how we were exceptional at one point because we honored and respected the law. And he had a quote that I always share. I think I put it in my book, which is very apropos to us, because amidst all the tumult that's been going on for the last many years, one of the things that this lawyer notices is the disrespect and denigration of the law. To me, it's, as a lawyer, and I got into it, it's really sacrosanct. And anyway, Professor Beiser said this, and I remember the words verbatim because of one little word he used. He said, "We disrespect and disregard the law at our peril. It's a slippery slope back down to the jungle from whence we came." Whence was the word. Whence we came.
Do it.
And you could see what's going on. Our leaders ignoring subpoenas, fighting the. It's just, to me, this is like, I don't even understand it. I think it's really a tragedy, and until the law is enforced, and most people don't believe that everybody's treated equal under the law, and no man is above the law, and we must impress that on any person who participated in any wrongdoing, whether it's in politics, government, et cetera, et cetera. That's the way. So that's the real horror for me as a lawyer of what I see going on now. But Dad, when I was graduating college, and with that, I liked my con law class, but I still didn't know what to do. And I said to my father, because I really wanted to be an airline pilot. That was my dream. And so I went and I share this story in Vagabond Pilot, everybody. I went to the library, and I got the New York phone book, which was, a Yellow Pages. It was about 6, 10
Yeah,
inch,
it was
a
massive.
treasure trove, right, of information. And I got all the addresses from all the airlines at that time and wrote away for applications because I was going to be a pilot. And my
How old were
friend,
you at this point?
this is when I was just a junior, senior in college around then, and I was thinking about what to do after college. And my brother's friend had just been hired by Eastern, and he was only two classes ahead of me. And they would, in those days, they would hire pilots because they had a third seat in the cockpit. Then they had a flight engineer, so they'd put the people with only 200 hours of time, which is at that time when you could get your instrument rating and commercial license at 200 hours. And then they put them in the third seat as flight engineers, and then they'd have to work themselves up.
Good.
So he was flying on the shuttle, on Eastern shuttle already. I said, this is great. I'm going to do this. So I was sent away for all the applications, and every application came back and it said it required perfect vision in those days. So the only airline that was a little flexible was Allegheny, but that was 2080. So realizing I'm blind as a bat.
Oh,
Although now I had my cataracts done so I could see perfect, but
wonderful.
most of the years I wore contact lenses and glasses. So I didn't know what to do. So I was sitting around the house one day and, Dad, I don't know what to do after college. I need to get a job. I want to earn some money, you know. Why don't you go to law school? Law school? I don't want to go to school anymore. No, this is good. And he gave some very interesting advice. He said, you know, being a lawyer, you'll always know what you can do and how far you can push the envelope. It's really important. Even if you stay in business, you know how things work, which is very true. And you know, if worse comes to worse, this was the best advice. You don't have, if you lose a job, you can always hang out your shingle and earn a living. And then he clinched the deal and he said, and I'll pay for it. So I said, okay, I'll go to camp for another 3 years because I had a great time in college. I figured, oh, law school will be just some fun too. And it was a little harder work, but it's been great. And being a lawyer, we do get, I don't want to use any nasty words here, but we do get our share of critique. And however, I really have enjoyed the experience because I have so much insight as a business person and as a lawyer. And now when you're older, you have this thing called life experience and maybe a little wisdom, you know. Yeah. And so it's been a fascinating career. But then again, if I could have been an airline pilot, I would have done that in a heartbeat.
Let me ask you, I think it's impossible not to be fascinated by the idea of flying when we're kids. But for many of us, as we grow up and perhaps are passengers on planes, it's demystified sometimes. And, you know, it's just part of our lives or not. What was it, do you think, and did it start in childhood, that made you dream about being a pilot, a commercial pilot, but a pilot and flying planes?
That's a great question because I've thought about that often. You know, I remember very distinctly my father when I was a toddler digging holes in the beach with sticks and we'd pretend we're pilots. I always was looking up in the air and looking at the planes because Rockville Center was pretty close to Kennedy and we were on kind of the flying route,
yes.
the approaches. And I would always, and those days the planes flew pretty low or around where we were. And I could say, oh, Eastern National. And I could point out the planes and everything. I was just fascinated with it.
Yeah.
You know, I figured I must have been a World War II pilot who didn't make it. And, you know, I'm trying to get back.
Back for another go.
I'm not exactly sure, but it was always a dream of mine. And I made it happen when I finally was able to afford flying lessons, etc., when I got to be a lawyer.
Bob, again, going back to childhood memories, the things that often set the tone for interest later in life, was your family much of a movie-going family as a family? Or did you, like me, kind of get your movie education part on Saturday afternoons at the Fantasy Theater, or from television?
Much more the latter, from by myself, from television. My family was very interesting, the dynamics, because I was the baby for 6 years before Wendy came along. And so my memories were is every Sunday we'd go out to dinner, and we went to, I don't know if you remember the snake pit on it was in the shopping center where George's was, and
Yes.
then Cookies in Hempstead was another favorite that my parents liked. So
Raynor's
Friday
Cabin.
night we'd go out. But then what happened was, as my brother and sisters got older and into junior and senior high school, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Sure. Reminds me to unplug my phone.
We didn't eat so much frequently together. And everybody was the older brother, older sister, and then I was getting older. We were all different, doing different things, and so I got a lot. I educated myself, especially in your area, which always have fascinated me, with the movies on TV. Some of the great movies, The Forbidden Planet, and all the great movies. When we were kids, they were churning them out, especially after the Roswell incident.
Now,
Hollywood got really crazy for a while.
That begs a follow-up question, which is, do you remember the first time growing up that you started to think about this whole unidentified flying object thing as completely separate from the wonderful science fiction that we were either watching in the movies or television or reading as kids, but the first time that you became aware of this serious subject of the potential of what these things might be?
Not for a long time, until when I was in California and they had a series on TV, In Search of Ancient Astronauts.
Yeah.
And I read Von Donnegut, and wow. So like when I had the experience of going to Tulum and the ruins there. And one of the evidence is that they have what they thought were aliens in space helmets that looked like that were gods along the border of the structure of the pyramid. It was kind of a pyramid. And of course, I had to open my mouth and ask the guide, well, what's that representative? I understand that represents, gods from space that he has a space. He said, no, I've never heard that. So, but that was about the first time I really got serious about it, and I started my reading about the subject. And then Roswell was a mind blower for me. Especially, and I think this is an interesting discussion we can have, especially as a lawyer, because we're trained to look at different things and weigh evidence. There's certain weight given to one piece of evidence versus others, and it was mind blowing for me. I came away saying this did occur. This was a cover up. The evidence was overwhelming by a preponderance of the evidence, especially I'm sure you're aware, being in the field, but what cinched it for me were the affidavits of the key principal witnesses on their deathbed, who were told, and obviously to shut up or they would be, taken away. And, this is the way our government does. It's funny how we don't want to, everything's politics instead of truth. And then you figure out what you're going to do, it's like, wait a minute,
our generation had a chance to experience this transition from, in a sense, 19th century traditionalism to 23rd century existentialism, in that in elementary school, now it all seems a bit like a vignette. We had our green boards. We had the Palmer method cards for penmanship up above them. And I think most of the classrooms at Hewitt School, the elementary school we attended, in the front center of the room had that classic unfinished portrait of George Washington. And certainly for the first few years at Hewitt School, and I don't remember when it changed, we said the Lord's Prayer in the morning. For me, it was just, well, that's what we're doing. Okay. And Father, Son, Holy Ghost, whatever that is, and amen. And let's start our day. And it was kind of like white light. Now I realize how controversial it is or was to many people. And the pledge to the flag,
Right.
which growing up post-war, most of our dads served. And growing up in often immigrant or one generation away from immigrant families, Jewish immigrant families, we knew about the Holocaust at a certain point and started to learn some of that dark history, that we grew up really with the feeling that we really lived in the greatest country in the world.
Absolutely.
And
Yep.
it really, I guess for me, and maybe for you, the Kennedy assassination, nothing was ever the same after that, but Vietnam, where I thought about myself back then and thinking, my dad was in the Army Air Corps. He was very proud of his service, being involved in something important and fighting fascism and something bigger than yourself. And that by the time I was service eligible, being a fairly astute young person politically, I knew it was the wrong war and I was not going to serve and really was ready to leave the country. I think by the time you were service eligible, I think the draft had shifted and you didn't have to worry about leaving the country. But it was a wonderful time again to have those dreams. And I think one thing we can't imagine, we sound like old fogies, but thinking about the music that came out as we were growing up and songs now that, you hear the word, oh, that's a classic. The hell it is. That, I remember when that song came out. Don't give me
We're
classic.
still listening. People are still listening to our songs.
And to try to explain to somebody what it was like and how exciting it was and just reinventing.
I must share that I did a post, maybe you saw it, but on Facebook, what you speak of, because I was the exact same way. When I remember going to camp and I was never so proud when John Philip Sousa music was there and we'd march down to the mess hall and, America, I mean, let's face it, America was feeling its oats. The commander in chief, Dwight Eisenhower, was our president for 8 years and presided over a very peaceful and very prosperous time post World War II. And I on Martin Luther King's birthday,
yes,
just this past few weeks ago, I was really depressed because every I make it a point every Martin Luther King Day to listen to his "I Have a Dream" speech. Absolutely brilliant.
Which he gave on my birthday.
Oh, really? Yeah. He was quite the orator.
Yes.
I was depressed. I couldn't figure out. I just didn't understand what was happening. The same stuff that I marched on Washington for civil rights in 1968. What is going on here that we're still having? We have to have a discussion about this. 245 years, 400 years, whatever it is. It's like, really, America? Holy smokes. I just don't get the hate. It's hard to understand how, wait a minute, all men are created equal. What's going on? And nothing changes. I mentioned before about politics and truth. I'd love to have a president who's unfiltered someday, who just speaks the truth. And then you have to deal with the politics because he's not interested in being reelected. He just wants to give America the truth.
Bingo.
And then we deal with it. But now it's just the George Carlin does some great routines about that, Well, as I was considering, or he does it.
Making anyway, politics into a profession.
I worry about it. It's like you were talking about making the choice about the war. And then when the Ellsberg papers came out, the Pentagon papers. And
yes, exactly.
Tough to swallow when people who were killed and died in Vietnam and who had to serve.
And you mentioned 1968, which was still the 60s. but an incredibly traumatic year, especially for younger, more idealistic people. Well, that's not fair, including younger, more idealistic people. The murder of Dr. King, and then a few short months later, the murder of Bobby Kennedy, which sent me and my then and still closest friend Lex Bernstein to Chicago for the convention in 1968, literally as a way, I think, partly of just trying to feel part of the process.
That was
Again,
horrifying because right before he died, you could see the overwhelming support.
Yeah.
I've never seen it since in any candidate. What he was generating across so many different strata of our society, and it was really representative when the train was pulling his casket back up to New York to St. Patrick's for the service, where Ted Kennedy gave one of the best. He was a great speaker, also, and everybody was standing by the tracks. You know, it was just so touching. But by the way, Alex Bernstein, great goalie. You're still friendly with him. Please send my very best to him.
I will, and he'll be watching this show, if not live.
Yeah.
I'll make sure that he
Where
does.
is he?
He lives in Scottsdale with his amazing wife. And after he graduated from Southside, he got his coach's license and kept it active for many, many years. And it was part of that core of, soccer-loving guys who helped build national interest for girls in soccer and really contributed to that whole culture in a way that they don't get credit for. But
wonderful. How wonderful. One of my most joyful experiences in life was when I was a soccer coach for so many kids. And the girls were the best to coach. The best team I had were my 10 and under Chiquitas. They played such a good little soccer game. They were great, So the kids today are wonderful. I think Title IX was one of the best laws that was ever passed. It really giving girls the opportunity to participate in sports at the same level as boys. It was terrific.
Now, shifting subjects a bit, you are now a practicing attorney in California. Constitutional law, or was it another area of specialty that you were involved in?
No, I got involved. My first job was I was hired, got a job right out of law school as a litigator in a small 12-man firm in Century City. So I became very skilled in procedure, and then eventually my practice evolved into, as it does in LA, entertainment and a lot of business work. Entertainment business. I say that if you've ever lived in DC, Hollywood fever is comparable to Potomac fever, because it's what the town is about.
That's right. Yeah.
And the business is it's a little bit it's so subjective that I don't really, and it's a small club, so I don't enjoy it as much, because I like that script. What do you mean you don't like that script? And it's been interesting. I've had some nice success. I represented some interesting folks. I represented the producer who did the movie Rudy, the football movie. So that was fun. And he's a good buddy of mine. And we did some other things. And so, yeah, it's fun.
At a certain point, you're practicing the law, but you have this childhood love of flying that you've never been able to actualize. At what point did you start to think, I could even, with my vision problems, if you're not a commercial pilot, corrective lenses are fine, I could get my pilot's license and fly on my own. When did that dream start to take over?
When I started earning a living and making some money, that I had some extra money to spend on leisure activity. When I was about 30, I started. I think I got my license. I started in 1979, so I was 31. I got my license on leap year day in April in 1980. So I've been flying a long time.
And is this something that began just sort of a weekend jaunt, or
You asked the question before. You asked, how did I get involved in it? And I wanted to come
yeah.
back. Well, when I was little, the grandparents, my father's parents moved to Florida very young, when they
Ah,
retired young. And so they had a home in Hollywood. And every Easter and Christmas, the kids and mom and dad would go down to see the grandparents. So I was flying on these Eastern Airlines. I remember distinctly, they had the triple tail Constellations, one of the more beautiful.
oh, the Constellation is the most beautiful plane.
And those days they allowed people to walk
Kids in the cockpit.
and
Sure.
I was no bigger than the armrest, and I would be running up and down the aisles, and then I would be in the cockpit with these guys, and to me they were like these gods. But what
Yes.
really I remember, all the dials, all the instruments. It's like, whoa, this is great, So another thing that really jazzed me, and it's still to this day, even in my little plane, it's flying with reference to instruments, and it still brings that same feeling of excitement when I get into the aircraft.
Once you started to fly, you were, of course, aware of the reality of these allegations of unidentified flying objects, as some of them being representative of advanced technology, hard metal machines under intelligent control. Did that subject come back in another way once you were a pilot? And at any point as a pilot, did you ever have your own UFO sighting?
No, I have never had my own sighting. But I was always very interested when the Navy, our armed services, would have an encounter.
Yeah. And
recently they've showed the encounters. And, pilots know that this is something strange is going on. It's a big sky, but when you see something that shouldn't be there, it's so my reflection is the pilots are telling the truth, and it's just, being buried.
Well, and as you know
about this,
up until really a few short years ago, 2018, really, to be a commercial or even a private pilot and be verbal about you're taking seriously the possibility that some UFOs were truly anomalous and perhaps representative of advanced technology from parts unknown, the potential, given our culture, for embarrassment to the company.
That was right. And so they wouldn't say anything.
And if they did, they could jeopardize their careers or their jobs.
Right. And they'd say, oh, you got a mental problem, so we're going to ground you, make life difficult.
And often it's been nicely characterized in some films, including, I think, possibly the beginning of Close Encounters. Do you want to report that as a UFO? Negative.
Right, exactly.
I need this? Exactly. Now, how did you, when you talk about the witness-driven testimony in Roswell, for me, you're talking in great part, obviously, of Kevin Randle, one of the great senior researchers in this field, and of course, Don Schmitt and Tom Carey, who have produced book after book that I think are some of the most extraordinarily powerful and validating in terms of a cumulative witness testimony. And, you're talking about the impact that reading some of this testimony had on you, whether it's Witness to Roswell or Children of Roswell. And almost all of those individuals are gone now, but I met a good number of them in Roswell and heard them tell their own stories. And when it's part of the given, these people, they're not asking for any money. They do not want publicity. They do not want to be well known for this. They do not want to write a book. They do not want to be on television. They simply want to go on record before they die with what they remember of what actually happened to them and their families. And at a certain point, the arguments that we hear of, you can't trust witness testimony. In a car crash, everybody's going to remember something a bit differently. It's open
Right.
to interpretation. But as you know better than most people, witness testimony can convict people in capital cases. Um, Obviously, it's important that it has supporting testimony of other types, ideally, but that that area of scholarship of Roswell witnesses for me, uh, as researched and validated by those three people, among others, um, is very powerful. And we are coming into the last 15 minutes or so of our first hour. And what I'd like to do is shift gears here now, Bob, because at a certain point in your life, you were faced with a situation, decisions, choices, and it culminated in your writing a book about an experience that you, as far as I'm concerned, dared yourself to create, to stop what you're doing, to just take your life plan and say, I've got a problem here, I've got an issue here, I've got many of them. I'm just going to do something else completely different, that's completely impractical, that is anxiety provoking. It's not the way I was taught as an adult I should be moving forward. This is a little reckless. It's very exciting. It's a dream come true, and it's risks taken. What contributed, what factors in your life that were going on, Bob, put you in a situation ultimately where you reacted by having this adventure and documenting it?
Well, it was pretty.
To whatever degree you're comfortable sharing.
No, I'll share. When I wrote, that was authentic. That was my truth. I have no problem sharing it. I guess you would understand this. I lived a very blessed and life. It was one of abundance. I never lacked for anything. I was provided for. I was taken care of. I was blessed. I truly was. And what happened was, after my parents died, my brother died. He died right before my mother, about 6 months. And after he died, I had gone back to New York to help him out because he was having some problems. He had to resign from the bar. He did some things that were inappropriate, and he couldn't withstand scrutiny, and he needed help to survive. I was a New York licensed attorney as well, and he asked for my help. And so at that time, this was in 2009 or so, I had been planning my retirement because I knew how much my father, what he had done, and he had set up family trust, and I wanted to take what my share of the 4 kids was going to be and set up the end of my life. So I was talking to life planners. You know how you do things when you young people don't know this, but when you get old, you start thinking about this. And my brother finally was not responsive, and he had to confess to me the jam that he got in and asked for my help. Well, I had always wanted to be a part of that. Even though I left, I still wanted to be a part of it, and had that stuff with my father and my brother that I hadn't really worked out. So I was tickled pink. I was flattered. My brother wants my help. Okay, I'm going to help him. And so I then was, for a bunch of years, even after he died, I was commuting from Los Angeles to New York pretty much every month, 6 weeks, 2 weeks there, to whatever, and handling business. My father's, the firm was very big in real property tax reduction work, which was kind of just a bulk of business that was kept on going. You didn't have to go out and finish a case and solicit new business. It was people used you over and over to file your tax protests, and the firm did very well. And so my brother was still doing that. And while he was alive, we represented, all of Columbia University, Rockefeller Plaza, all these big buildings, the Time Warner, and the tax reductions on those buildings could be quite significant, etc. So it was very exciting to me. Could you hold on? I gotta.
Sure.
I just see a low battery signal coming on my computer, so I don't want to
plug in.
Okay, there we go. So I went back, and everything was going fine for 2-3 years. It was very productive. My brother and I were very close, as best I thought we were, and I didn't know very much about really what happened until after he died. And apparently, he had he did some bad things to clients, and misappropriated monies is a kind word. And I then became the brunt of many clients suing the firm and me, even though I lived in California. I knew nothing about any of this. And as a result, bottom line was I had one client who got a huge judgment against me. Well, not a judgment against me, against the shopping. My father had a shopping center. We had sold it. And in New York, there's a clawback rule that you could, after I sold it, we disperse monies. But if there's a judgment creditor out there, they can get you to disgorge the money. So now the man wanted his $4 million a couple of years after, in handling estates, that we sold the property. And so I had to file bankruptcy, and I lost my home. I lost everything. And now I was homeless. I was penniless, because all my equity, we in California, everything's in your house. So I didn't do much planning here. And so I was really faced with, it was bad. And I was deeply depressed. And I had some dear friends who I had put up when they moved out many years ago to California. They said, hey, you come out, stay with us.
Sure.
And after a little while, a couple of months there, I realized, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
Well, I have no money. I'm going to either live in my car, or maybe I'll take a trip in my plane and just see what the universe is going to deliver to me. And I felt, because I had been flying so many years, and I flew in that aircraft, I've owned it since 1994, I was very comfortable in it.
This is your own plane that you've owned since 1994.
1994, right. And the only reason I kept it was there was one of my friends had been so gracious. My dear friend Enid had loaned me money. So I said, God forbid something happens to me, I'm giving this to you. Okay. And I did so before the 6-month preferential creditor stuff that's in bankruptcy. So that was, and she still allowed me to fly it, but she's protected, So anyway, I that's what I decided to do, because I didn't have a choice. I needed to go, and it was either my car or I'm going to go fly, and I'll see what's out there. Maybe I'll move to somewhere. And I have a lot of friends, and that's how the journey started. And I started putting it.
Again, just to clarify, because this really is such a shock, not because of anything legally or morally wrong that you did, but simply doing your best to assist your brother out of a situation that he created for himself with some illegalities involved. The weight of this loss settles on you, and all of your savings, your equity, your home, they're gone.
That's what happened. And so now I know it sounds bad. It was bad, but really, I've never been happier now. I've learned so much about life and money and myself, and what you really need, what's important, what's not, and it ain't money. And we go on that track, and you want to have things, and, and do all this stuff, and you think you should have. And all of a sudden, when the rug was pulled out from under me, it's been a real journey learning about that. You know, my mother had a saying, rich or poor, it's good to have money. Yeah, that's true. That's true. You know, it's nice, right? You know, it makes the world go round. But there's so much richness in so many other things that has changed me greatly.
From the conception, from the beginning of you getting in that plane and saying, here I go. This adventure, wherever it takes me, is about to begin, until you get to the point where I've gotten the lessons here. It's taken me this amount of time, and I think I'm going to write a book. How long was this journey in linear time from beginning to end, so to say?
That's a good point. I decided to write. It was more for my own therapy. I wasn't planning to write a book. Good. I was told, as a lawyer, we write a lot. So I've gotten many compliments about my writing and letter writing. Hey, you give good letter and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But, I never thought about a book. And so I just decided I'm going to try to write my thoughts and share what my impressions are. Because one of the things that was interesting for me, I did this trip across America in my last year in law school by car. So now I was going to see a different perspective about America. And it's a mind-blowing place. If people haven't traveled around America and seen how big this place is, we have no problems. That's what really blows me away. This place is so big, you know, the only thing we got to figure out is how to get the water from the east to the west, right? So, but other than that, because you can't build without water.
Again, when we come back from break, we're going to start showing pictures and telling the stories around this. This is such an interesting conversation for me. Again, as a professional interviewer, I've simply never quite been in this life situation with a guest. And it's wonderful to reconnect with you, Bob, and also to reminisce to a degree about this wonderful place that we were lucky enough to grow up in. For my 50th high school reunion, we visited the school, and it was a Saturday. The principal came in and spent several hours with our class, claiming some extraordinary bragging rights. I think the rate of graduates who go on to college and university from Southside High School, well, it was like 98% or something. It was absolutely extraordinary. And it is one of the most highly rated high schools, public high schools in the United States. Their media department, in what had been the old art room, really was quite something. And I remember standing outside the door on the second floor of my old English class, where I had Mrs. Mendoza, Barbara Mendoza ignited my love of theater in a way that had existed, but like nobody else had done before. And thinking about some of the wonderful talent that we had as teachers there. Anyway, this is Peter Robbins, my special guest tonight, Robert Young. We're here on Meanwhile Here on Earth, and we will be back in 4 minutes. Join us.
Hey members, the new KGRA DB app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRA DB programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRA DB.
Are we alone in the universe? The most important question facing humanity is on the verge of being settled once and for all. The Mutual UFO Network has been at the forefront of this journey for nearly 50 years. Our members worldwide are dedicated to the research, documentation, and awareness that will shape the future of humanity. Won't you join us?
It's not just a donation.
It's a warm blanket.
It's a bottle of clean water.
It's a roof and a bed.
It's knowing someone cares.
It's feeling safe.
It's a today that's better than yesterday.
Every dollar you can spare helps so much more than you can imagine. Please, donate now to help people affected by Hurricane Ian. Your support is urgently needed.
Discover the Observation Deck, a one-of-a-kind virtual event platform that takes video conferencing to the next level by using avatars to navigate a campus. There's so many areas and activities to choose from. There's a 1,000-seat auditorium, an expo hall, a nightclub, and even a beach. So come attend a conference, take a class, or hear a lecture on the incredible Observation Deck campus. Go to theobservationdk.com.
You're listening to the KGRA Digital Broadcasting Network. We provide unparalleled coverage of trending news in the world of ufology, cryptozoology, and paranormal phenomenon. Whether you're watching our video live stream or listening to one of our audio programs, you are getting the best from world-renowned researchers and hosts, guiding you through topics the mainstream won't touch. Miss one of your favorite programs? No problem. Head over to the members area at kgradb.com for access to our massive library of award-winning content. Make contact, stay connected, only at kgradb.com.
And we are back with this episode of Meanwhile Here on Earth with my special guest, Robert Young. Peter Robbins here, your host. So, Bob, the official beginning of this journey, how did you kind of arrive at it? And was it a situation of you departing a small airport, saying goodbye to people, and I'm not sure where this is going to take me, and I'm off, and who knows where I'm going? What was the start like?
Okay. Well, I had to plan a route. Most of the times I can jump in my plane and fly up for a lunch somewhere. Oftentimes from Santa Monica to Camarillo, they have a great cafe up there. It's 20 minutes. You go. It's called the $100 hamburger. You'll fly somewhere and have a hamburger for $5 and spend $95 on fuel. To wit, $100 hamburger. But this trip now I had to figure a little different. There were a lot of things that would bear on my choices. My aircraft had a service ceiling of only 13,000 feet. It's a trainer aircraft. It's really not a cross-country machine. And so it was not like I could be flying long legs. I'd be limited to 3 hours of flying time. And then I'd have a half an hour of reserve. I was also flying into new weather that I never experienced. A lot of convective activity. The heat in the East and the Midwest is very different. We don't have that out in California. We don't really have weather, truly. I mean, it's very benign. And so flying is really delightful because most of the times sky's blue, it's clear. So I had to start thinking about how I was going to go. I wasn't going to tangle with the Rockies. I was going to go south of them. And so I had friends in Arizona that I wanted to see, and then I wanted to go to New Mexico and Roswell, and then there was people in Texas and et cetera, and along the way. I was going to go down to Florida, but some things didn't work out, and then I went up the coast I wanted to make sure I went to the Wright Brothers Memorial. And if anybody's not been there, pay homage, please. It's just amazing. And on the way back, I was going to, again, I was going to go north because I was seeing friends in Pittsburgh and Michigan. I wanted to go to Sioux City and then to see a friend and then to the Mount Rushmore and then come down again. But that I got way late on time and couldn't do that. But I had to think a little differently, make a plan.
Had you allotted yourself a general amount of time to have this adventure, for lack of a better term, or it was just kind of open-ended once you filed your initial flight plan in your mind?
Well, no, I had planned it from pretty much May to September. I had a lot of appointments that are scheduled back in September. So I was giving myself these 4 or 5 months of travel. Again, my dear friend Enid had a birthday surprise. She took me to Europe for my birthday, and we cruised down the Danube. So that was a break when I got to the East Coast.
Way to go, Enid.
Enid's one of the terrific souls on the planet. But don't tell her I said that.
No, and I'm sure she's not going to be listening to this show.
But anyway, I did not. And there's a distinction in the book that's very clear. Going, I was not rushing at all. I was spending whatever time I did. It would take me however long. I knew I had to be in the New York area by the end of July when we left. And so I left in May. I had a lot of time. So I was not rushing. Coming back, however, I only had a 3-week window. I left late, and I was then faced with a thing that pilots deal with. It's called get-home-itis. When people rush to get to home or to complete their trip and ignore warning signs. I think the one of the biggest examples is John F. Kennedy Jr., for instance. He was a young pilot.
Tragic.
Well, yes, big loss. And he was a low-time pilot. He was in a complex aircraft, meaning it was a retractable gear aircraft. It was a little faster than what he trained in. He had less than 200 hours, and he's departing at night in mist and difficult and weather, and he's not instrument rated. No. And
terribly reckless
instructor, his wife and sister had to be there. You know, all these little things. He had to get there, and he didn't really have to get it. He should have left the next morning. But hey, you know, so that get-home-itis affected me greatly, and I almost bought the farm because of that. And I'll share that story at some point.
Okay, Bob. When you left, even with your back to the wall financially, you had to know that you had enough to operate the plane, to cover incidental expenses, to stay different places, to, just have a little bit of a cushion for emergency, and that you were returning back to California with some kind of strategy to reclaim your life in practical financial terms. Is that accurate?
Yes, I wasn't sure I was coming back to California.
Wow.
I was looking elsewhere to live and move and start anew. That was a real possibility. Yeah. Sure. So the places I went, I was looking with that eye. No, I did not.
Okay. Let's start to take a look at some of these pictures that you sent.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Bet. And the cockpit.
This gives you an idea of how small it is.
Wow.
It's like about 42 inches wide, if my memory serves me correct. And you can see the panel.
Yeah.
Right behind my hand is a GPS. It's not lit up, but
oh, for goodness sakes! Yeah, just like a regular car GPS. Geez.
Yeah, it's an amazing. When I first learned to fly on instruments, we had to use needles off of ground-based signals, and then try to figure out where we were in space. But now you have it on a GPS, and you follow this magenta line, and it's like, wow, this is easy, So technology isn't, man, amazing. The technology we do. It's too bad we haven't evolved up here too much. But anyway.
25, 30 years ago, I had a dear friend who's gone now, but Richard Isaacs was
I remember Richie. Yeah.
Richard was a private investigator, and like you, fell in love with flying. And we would sometimes get a plane in Jersey, fly up to Ithaca to see my family, fly back to New York. In one case, flew up to Bard College because one of my mentors from the School of Visual Arts was being honored there. And that $100 hamburger, reality strikes home at that time. I want to go further back now, much further back, to the black and white days of Southside High School. No, what am I saying? This is Little League.
No, I was 8 years old. There I am, crouched down in the front row, number 4, on Hayes Oldsmobile.
And Robert Hillman behind you, Larry Finford to your left.
Bobby Danziger.
Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah, Barry Richardson in the front row.
Yay! I'm still in regular touch with Barry.
Larry Sorkin.
God. Oh.
Yeah.
Here
Hank
we go to
Sharp
Southside.
In the front row. Now, this is when I played beat basketball on our junior varsity team with Paul Figueroa. We're right next to each other.
Just to your right there, who continues to be a friend. And Mr. Morse is your coach?
Yeah, Robert Morse, Bobby Morse. Yeah, he was a great guy.
Yeah.
Him and Jack Small were really good coaches.
Well, jumping ahead again. Tell us what's going on here.
Now, this is a little history. A lot of people from Rockville Center might remember Patty Berman and Sherry Berman.
Jeez.
This is Patty's son, Alan. And Alan and I have become very close over the years. He came to, when he graduated college, he spent a summer with me kind of interning and helping out in my law office, deciding whether he wanted to go to law school or not. And we have bonded, and he's just a big sweetheart of a guy. And that's his little daughter, Joey. And they lived in, at that time, in north of Detroit, in Oakmont or I forget the name, but that's Troy Oakmont Airport. And we took the kids to the plane to fuel up a few days before I was going to leave. And a lot of bad weather there, boy. That flying into that airport was quite the experience. I was flying along from Pittsburgh, south of Lake Erie and Cleveland, and I was heading towards Toledo, and I was going to head up to Oakmont, north of Detroit. And I could see in the distance it was really gray and dark, and yet the weather was forecasted to be fine. And as soon as I turned northbound, my airspeed increased 30 knots. They were reporting a thunderstorm about 50 miles away. So already now, once I saw that, I said, oh,
Yep.
Those winds are a lot stronger and they're close. I got to get this plane. I better, land this thing. So I finally found the airport, and I was slowing down, and all hell broke loose. The winds were just tossing the plane about in a way that I never experienced. all the forces, yaw, pitch, everything was going. It was like I was pushing the plane just to try to get it where I was on. And then usually this plane is, I've known it so well. It's things by rote, and you kind of know what. It was really shocking, and I was fighting for control to get this plane down. And then I was high on the final approach, and all of a sudden I got below the tree line, and the winds just stopped. I don't know what happened. I got below. I guess they were, and landed, and it was exactly. So it was quite the excitement getting into Detroit. This now, everybody. This is when I made it cross country. I couldn't believe it. This is when Miss Enid came up to the plane and took a picture of me as I just slid open the canopy. But I couldn't believe I flew across country in this little plane, that I actually did it.
And now looking at these pictures, we can see how really small this plane is. I mean, it's, I venture to say, almost cute. Not the right technical word.
She is a very cute girl. She is. But one of the things that's interesting in the book is I for people who haven't read the book, I've broken it down into the piloting, what goes on for a pilot, what a pilot really does. Yeah. Because, people would, he just steers the plane and he flies. But there's so much going on. You communicate, you navigate, you fly. You have to make decisions and change your things. And so a lot is going on all the time. My plane did not have an autopilot. That plane did not have an autopilot. So I was hand flying the aircraft all the time. So it gets tiring.
What I was going to say about
and everything. So
my friend Richard, when we used to fly locally, he was not rated for instruments, and we flew with a map in my lap and following essentially landmarks or roads or bodies of water on the ground.
Right.
And just doing it visually. It's challenging, but it's terribly exciting at the same time. And of course, obviously pretty arcane now. We have a young woman here aiming directly at ice cream.
Now, with no offense to all my loves in my life, this is the love of my life. This is Gia. Gia Marie Sharp. Gia is the daughter of a young lady, Tammy Sharp, who lives in Phoenix. She used to work. I had as I was said, the blessing of being able to own some minor league baseball teams. My other pursuit, and I owned 4 teams, 2 in California and then 2 in Hawaii. And Tammy was one of our hostesses in Victory. We call them the Victory Girls, who would go around the ballpark, make sure everybody's happy, look good, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And she had this child, and I saw that she was in Los Angeles looking for a place to stay. And I just messaged her, and she came with, Gia was an infant then. And then every year they would come back. And Gia and I became close buddies because her moniker for me is I am Ice Cream Bob. Why is that? She's actually, you would appreciate this, she's eating Carvel. She never had ice cream. And I said, I'm going to take you to the best ice cream ever. There's one Carvel store in Los Angeles. And so I turned Gia on to Carvel. And, and every time they come into town, we go to Carvel. And she just calls me Ice Cream Bob. Of course, now she's a big girl now. She's 8, 9 or something, But she's delicious. And for me, not having children, it's been just a joy to spend time with this little one.
Yeah.
And she's just a sweetheart.
Amen. Now, fill us in.
This is a picture that is in my home.
Yeah.
Of before and after.
Yep.
And nothing need be said, right? It's just what I really love about the photographs and was that bright, beautiful, sunny day.
Oh my God.
And then the dark gray and the emptiness
Yeah.
of them no longer there.
Were you in Los Angeles on September 11, 2001?
I was. I got a call from a friend, wake up, and watched the entire saga.
Of course, so early for you guys.
Yeah. It was terrible.
Yeah, I was on West 57th Street.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, never the same. And I knew those trade center buildings better than a lot of people in that I watched them being built from the ground up. And the view that I had in my loft in Chinatown for almost 8 years was the Trade Center at the Manhattan Bridge in the foreground. But as a tour guide, I was up in those buildings quite a number of times, including Windows on the World repeatedly and on both roofs at different times as well. Also old enough to remember the neighborhood before it was rezoned. I think it was 16 acres. And it used to be called Radio Row, because going back to the time of our grandparents, that's where you would go to go shopping for a new radio.
Really?
Or ultimately,
I didn't know that. Cool.
Yeah. And also in the old days of true high fidelity, if you were going to get a new Fisher preamp or something, you do all of your comparative shopping down there before you made your purchase. So I took it very personally indeed. And that before and after picture just says it perfectly. This is another very poignant shot here.
So one of my claims to fame, Peter, you know who that man in the middle is? That's Tom Carvel. This is at graduation of Carvel College. I actually owned a Carvel store.
Well, that is...
And you know, that's my proudest degree is Carvel College.
Now, if you live in a region or another part of the world where the word Carvel does not ring a bell, certainly in our part of the country, that was a big part of growing up. The soft ice cream franchises that came in probably about the same time as the early McDonald's or so. And Tom Carvel, you know, that's a major cultural force.
Yes, he was one of the first franchisers. So one of my first entrepreneurial pursuits was to syndicate a deal with my father and his friends, and we bought we became a distributor for Carvel products in Riverside County, and we had to open up a certain number of stores. So that was a fun time for a couple of years.
I must say,
I gained a lot of weight.
Not me, not at all.
Nah, you know, you'd walk into the store and make yourself a banana boat full of that.
Right.
It wasn't too good.
A perk on the job, getting your dad in that photo looks very distinguished, and my first thought was very formidable. I don't know if I would want to go up against this guy in a court of law.
My father was a tough guy. My mother was the warmth and personality, but dad knew people. If he didn't like you, forget about it. There was nothing, you know, he had a keen awareness about people. He was really a good judge of character. And there was no nonsense about him, you know. It was when I was younger, it was kind of brutal. But then when you look older and, you know, he taught me some great lessons. And I was able to understand, you know, you forgive, you understand what parents are going through when you get that age and you start realizing about life and stuff. So,
amen.
He was a pretty brilliant guy. So as I said, Peter, I didn't know where I was going. So that was my belongings. That was it. I packed up the plane, and I was very conscious of in these little aircraft, the center of gravity is also is always when you're loading baggage,
yes.
You have to be within what they call is the envelope. And in the pilot's operating handbook, there's a place where you can't load your aircraft so that you are in balance, because like that, there was a crash outside of in Afghanistan when a 747 took off and its cargo slid all the way. It got unloosed. It slid all the way back. And then the pilots had no pitch control. They just pancaked down. Well, that's a harsh example of what could happen. But in my little plane, it was always something I was very conscious of, to have most of the weight. So I had my heavy bags in the front there. And anyway, that's what I did. And you could see there's a GoPro, and I kind of tried to set up camera.
Sure.
Record that and stuff. So it's kind
of. For the months that you were, I was going to say on the road, the allegorical road, at night, you didn't know where you would be staying or who you would be sometimes meeting or what, if anything, you'd be having for dinner or breakfast. It was, flying by the seat of your pants.
I was so blown away by what life had. Whoa. Because you have a path, you do it, you're supposed to live happily ever after. Not. So all of a sudden, I really had to become a little evolved, so to speak, and recognize, okay, I've totally surrendered here to what the universe is going to deliver. And it's kind of exciting, you never know what's going to happen. And,
exactly.
You got to trust. And like I said before, it's been a wonderful, even though I wouldn't wish it on anybody, it's been a wonderful experience to really get in touch with myself at this late stage,
I'm thinking to myself as you're speaking, you chose the law, a highly regimented, organized, codified body of work to base, your professional life in. And then circumstance basically strips you and washes you up on a beach. And life has not really prepared you for, if you own sports teams and then all of a sudden you don't have a home, things are not just out of balance, but you're in another world. And you can feel...
It was honestly, it was very painful and humiliating.
And I can only imagine.
It's taken me a while to not accept, but to embrace really what's going on, life.
That's right.
And so it's been a wonderful growth period. Who knows? You keeps thinking you're going to keep learning, but you do. And you play the cards you dealt.
Yeah.
And no whining. It's okay. Life
no crying in baseball.
No crying in baseball, and life is really precious.
And this month again,
that's little G again. You can't get enough of her already. Also, huh? She's so cute. Now this is when I'm departing Danbury, and I'm going back to.
And here's where we see the real scale of this plane.
Yes.
This is tiny.
Yes.
Wow.
So you have to. I describe it in the book as an MG or or
the sports car.
A little sports car with wings. It only weighs about 1,600. It's gross weight, fully fueled, two people, and baggage about 1,675 pounds. Cars are heavier than that.
That's like a Cessna 162. That's
pretty much.
Wow. Except that they're bigger.
This has a 160 horsepower engine. I upgraded the engine and went in it, but we did about 130 knots true airspeed, meaning no wind, and which is about 143 miles an hour was its cruise speed. So
it's wonderfully slow.
Yeah, well, that's a good point you make, because going across country, this time by plane versus car, I saw so much. When I drove, all I saw was corn. That's corn, right? When you cross the Midwest, it's amazing. The place is huge. I couldn't believe it. And now traveling by air in plane and down low, it's not like an airliner. You can really see how settlements started.
Yes.
I mean, it was really uncanny in North Carolina. All the settlements, right? The ships came from England or wherever they came, and they went up the river for shelter because there were no real natural ports.
Sure.
And then the cities like Wilmington, all of them were inside. And it was fascinating to me to look at that. You know, the mesas in New Mexico, I could actually see them. And then how green Texas was. No wonder they have so much cattle. There's so much grass. Whoa. So it was fascinating. It just, America is an amazing place. Just crazy.
Especially
anyway,
again, like you say, this was I was when Gia and Tammy and we went to a museum in Phoenix. This was one of the remaining B-17s. I can't see what the name is. This is who is that? I can't read her name, but she was just being serviced there. Most of them had flown over to Europe for a celebration about the war. So this machine was there, and it was quite fascinating. Wow. Amazing that all of what we associate with this particular extraordinary aircraft.
Now, this is a great story. This is the name. His name is Robert, but his name was Bert. He was the linesman at the place I stopped in Deming, New Mexico. And he was so nice. He offered me a sandwich. You want a sandwich? And he brought me a sandwich. It was ham, and I don't eat ham. He said, well, there's tuna. Go put back for tuna. What do I owe you for that? You don't owe me anything. You don't. Yeah. It's like somebody's being so nice. It was like, whoa. Yeah. And then we started talking because on the TV was Fox News, and they were broadcasting about, at that time the big brouhaha about the migrants at the border and ICE. And ICE was processing people trying to come to America in 3 hangars on the field, across the field, and he pointed it out to me. So here comes this, I profess I'm to the left. I'm a liberal, compassionate guy. I'm sorry, but that's who I am. We start engaging in a conversation. And I wanted to see what somebody thought, and it was very interesting, trying to engage somebody who had some firm views about nobody comes here, this is very firm. And he was there, he told me, because he had worked in the space industry. He had high top security clearances. And we got along and we exchanged our opinions. And it was refreshing in that way that we could actually talk.
Yeah, this is
which
crucial.
I find, as you said before, how things have changed so dramatically for us. Civil discourse is... Yeah. We can't even talk to each other.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think one of the awful downsides, it's not so much of social networking, it's of these infernal little handheld devices that control the lives of so many people and preoccupy them. And I think one of the saddest casualties is the art of conversation. You have so many smart, well-educated younger people now who are uncomfortable doing what we're doing right now, talking back and forth, as opposed to, when you finish, I'm going to say what I want, but I'm really not that interested in what you're saying. It's just, it would be impolite for me to start talking about what I want to talk about until you finish, and I wish you would right now. There's a sadness to it for me, as well as on a kind of macabre level, thinking 2 or 3 generations ahead, when thumbs have evolved to be one of the larger and more.
I was reading, I saw Richard Dreyfuss wrote a book just recently. I haven't read it, but he had a little blurb out there about it. How the students, the kids now are not taught civics, none of these things that we were taught. They don't know how the government works. None of these things that are really important. And that's been done, in my humble opinion, deliberately. This is a way to dumb down everybody and It's just could I say it's shameful?
No.
It's shameful. But Bert was my example of how I could engage with somebody and have this interesting conversation.
Yeah.
And we even got into talking a little about policy, so that was interesting for me.
Ooh, that is a good look.
See, right there is the picture of the 3 ice hangers in the distance. That's why
Oh, yeah.
There they are. Yeah. The helicopters were coming in, just bringing people in, and they would process them there.
This plane dates from 1993 or so?
This plane was built in 1971.
Wow.
It was the second model of the American Aviation, who built it at the time. It was later acquired by Grumman. And this is the trainer this is the AA1, and it's AA1A. It's the trainer. They modified the wing because the AA1 had its wing was smaller and it was a little too hot and fast for a trainer, and they were having problems. So they made it a little more docile. But the difference in planes is as long as the structure is fine, of course, engines engines are changed on a number of hours. So usually they last about 2,000 hours, and then you have to put in a new engine. So you can keep flying the plane as long as the fuselage and the structure is okay.
Bob, about how many hours of flying time as a private pilot do you now have, give or take?
I'm near 4,000.
Okay. My question for you is, somewhere along the line, you faced your most challenging, frightening event as a pilot, possibly even feeling that you might not get out of it alive. Can you share that with us? Was there one particular event that kind of was that dire that it stands out in your mind?
I've had two incidents. One where I wrote about in an article in Flying Magazine, learning how to breathe. When my throttle got jammed over coming from Camarillo to Van Nuys, and I couldn't figure out how to. I had to make an engine out landing eventually, and that was very interesting because I was going to go back to Santa Monica. I told the Van Nuys Tower, my throttle's jammed. I think I'm going to go back and land at Santa Monica. And out of the blue, a pilot piped up on the airways and said, "I wouldn't do that if I were you. Van Nuys has an 8,000-foot runway. Santa Monica has a smaller runway. Stay where you are."
Oh,
it was like kind of an angel. Like, whoa.
Wow.
So I did, and I managed to cut the engine about 600-700 feet and glide in on final. So that was the one scary thing, and it turned out a butterfly valve jammed in the carburetor, preventing the throttle from using.
Wow.
But then in Vagabond Pilot, I experienced something that was, in retrospect, it was frightening because at the time I didn't realize it. I was beginning to suffer from hypoxia. Hypoxia is when is a lack of oxygen at higher altitudes.
Yeah.
And I was trying to get to. This is on the way back. Get home-itis was a factor. I was trying to get to Tucson from outside of Denver. I was in Longmont, Colorado.
Okay.
And I was going to fly back to Deming and to Tucson, but there was a storm coming up from Baja. And the only way I could beat the storm, they said, well, if you cut across the mountains in New Mexico and Arizona, you could refuel. I realized I could refuel at a place called Safford, Arizona, and get into Tucson. And I kept on climbing. And I had to get up above the clouds, which were now at 11,000, 12,000 feet.
Oh,
so I
boy.
climbed up to 13,000 feet. I didn't think about this. I didn't plan this well.
Yeah.
Because one of the things if you're going that high, over 12,500 feet for more than 30 minutes, you're supposed to get supplemental oxygen, etc.
You bet.
And I didn't have supplemental oxygen. I didn't even think about it. The only thing I thought about was when I was pulling the plane up is, wow, the plane's doing so fabulous. It's just purring. And I could have climbed. And I'm thinking, well, I can go even higher. Right?
You could. You could meet God.
Well, yeah. And you know, but I didn't realize that, Peter. Now I'm telling the story until after I got into the hotel, and I said, "What the heck?" Because I had a
that made sense then.
I had a landing incident that I couldn't understand why I had such a bad landing. So I was over 12,000. I was at 13,000 feet for 45 minutes.
Whoa!
An hour. I'm feeling great. I was like, this is great, man. Look at the planes doing. I was giddy. I was having the initial.
You're in an altered state.
Correct. And all of a sudden,
leading to death very often, but an altered state.
All of a sudden, there was what they call a SIGMET warning, significant meteorological warning. And I have a SIGNET, and the guy starts announcing. He came over, the controller, who I had flight following with. From Safford, Arizona, with embedded thunderstorms to, and I said, I'm diverting. So I immediately told him I'm going to Truth or Consequences, because I had told him if the weather closed in, I would divert to Truth or Consequences. Truth or Consequences, New Mexico, Peter. How ironic that here I am on this journey, and it's Truth or Consequences. So you remember the show. What's it going to be for Bob? Right? Truth or And when I landed, I was on a 10-mile, I could see the airport from way out. I'm just cruising in, great. I diverted, wonderful, not thinking anything. And I had such a bad landing. Bounced significantly 2 times, where I had to take immediate action to arrest the beginning of a porpoise, because otherwise you could really have a propeller strike, the wheel could break off.
Sure.
And because the runways in New Mexico are long, they need a lot of long runway, I was able to land the plane. But when I got into the hotel, I'm trying to think about what happened. And then it dawned on me that, the way I was feeling, that I had the beginnings of hypoxia. And if that SIGMET hadn't come, I would have been curtains, because I would have kept on going. I wouldn't have been aware enough of what to do. And I would have flown right into a thunderstorm. That would have been curtains.
That is.
So in those 2 events,
after the fact,
you talk about evolution, of a soul. For me, those voices, there's got to be somebody out there watching, right? Watching over this crazy guy, but it's a good story. Here we are.
Yes, here we are. Only one place in the world.
I love this town. This town has such a good vibe.
Yeah.
They don't overdo the stuff. They do it tastefully. It's adorable. Everybody was so nice.
Yes.
Wonderful.
It is a special town, and it's important to remember, locating it in 20th century history. We think of Roswell in only one way, as a rule, in this country. It's a brand that is identifiable as Coca-Cola around the world. That word means, the legend, the myth, the actuality of the crash. But Dr. Robert Goddard, the father of American rocketry, did all of his early experimenting in the 1920s in Roswell.
That's right. They have a nice monument to him.
They not only have a nice monument, there is a Robert Goddard Museum, really very close to the Roswell Art Museum, which is a lovely kind of regional survey museum of, what you'd imagine, a very wonderful eclectic collection, as well as, of course, the UFO Research Center and Museum on Main Street there. But it's joining, in a way, the unidentified flying objects with the American history of rocketry. It's also, I don't know, if the whole UFO thing had never happened, it would still be a very interesting town in that part of the Southwest. An awful lot of military and retired military folks there, a reasonable standard of living, and geologically a hard basin under that entire area. So unlike a lot of New Mexico in the Southwest, there is a water table that is maintained in the greater Roswell area because of that kind of sink-like huge feature underneath the area. And often when drought hits that part of the Southwest, you can almost put a compass point on Roswell, and they're in much better shape than others.
And they have that beautiful recreational area, the Elephant Butte Dam reservoir area. Yeah, it's really wonderful place.
And with some friends.
And then I met some of your friends. Yeah.
Yes, they keep me posted on what's going on. Also, the only Walmart with a UFO themed mural on the full side of the building. It is very impressive and good marketing. And the only McDonald's in the shape of a landed craft.
Right. This is going into Dallas. In Dallas, the weather was closing in on me. And this is now my first time I'm dealing with some significant convective activity. And the controller asked if I was IFR capable, and I said yes. And he said, "Do you have your charts?" I said, "But I don't have my charts." He said, "Okay. Do you want an IFR clearance?" I said, "No," because I wasn't current. Meaning, when you're an instrument-rated pilot, you have to have practiced a certain number of approaches and holds every 6 months. And I very rarely use it in California. Once in a while to go through the marine layer that comes in our fog, but it's something I wasn't current. And I realized I was going to have to take the instrument clearance when he turned me into two clouds that were just closing, and I was going to go right through them. So fortunately, I was only in the soup for about a minute. And it was kind of fun because there was a little rain shower, and they brought me around with vectors, and it worked out.
And moving on.
Now anybody who is interested in flying must go here. This is Kill Devil's Hill in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina.
Oh my
That's the monument to the Wright brothers. The National Park Service put in a little runway next to it, about 3,000 feet, so pilots can fly into it.
Sure.
And this was really moving for me as a pilot.
Yeah.
This is, you're going to see some more here. This is the monument up close.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I sent you the one with the words on it. On the other side, it says genius. And really, these guys were, considering this was they created a whole science. They really were meticulous in how they approached this challenge.
Bob, do I remember correctly that the flight was on the beach, or the initial flight was actually off of that plateau where the monument is?
That is correct. That is Devil's Hill, and you tested their gliders off of that.
Okay.
And then they built a rail to launch the Wright Flyer below that.
Right.
And I don't know if you're going to show any more pictures that may be there.
Sure.
But you could see there is the path, and further down where in the distance near those buildings, there's a rail, like a railroad track.
Yeah.
And they put the rail over there, and then they have markers of the 4 flights that they did of the first time on December 3, December 3. Was it 1903, I think, 1907?
Yep.
And the distance they covered. Fascinating. Just fascinating. And now this is the Wright Flyer. They have a little museum looking back at the hill. I was just, as a flyer, it was like, wow, this is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And then what happened was a great experience. I'm standing there looking at this rail with the markers, and looking back at the hill and seeing where they came. And all of a sudden, a couple of F-16s just zoom overhead, and I look up and I go, this is incredible. 1903, 2019, and now we're talking about going to Mars in less than 100.
Yeah.
Like, whoa.
It boggles the mind in our lifetime. I remember speaking with my grandmother when I was young, my dad's mom, who was born in the late 1880s and lived to be 97 years old, and used to talk about remembering the day, I guess in the equivalent of early junior high school, middle school, where they talked about what had happened the day before when these two brothers in North Carolina had flown this craft that they had created. And then, and I watched men, on Mars, on the moon. We can say we were born in the age of analog technology and tube radios. And
that's true. We have this phone, right? This thing has more computer power than that whole room they had for Apollo, right?
And I remember as a Cub Scout diligently winding copper wire around a toilet paper tube, and then with the crystal. And my dad said I did the same thing in the 1920s early 30s as a Boy Scout, and with no batteries, no technology other than copper, a quartz crystal, you could pick up radio shows and sounds that were being made, on the airwaves. And for me, that was
that the beginning for you of your interest in this, in the field that you got involved in?
Not at all. I just, as a kid, again, as you know, it was such a more innocent time, and the whole scouting movement, Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, I took to and enjoyed tremendously in terms of, forest craft and being resourceful and being somewhat idealistic and getting badges on your uniform. I think had I not worked through all of my uniform stuff, while I actually was an explorer scout at 16 and kind of an assistant scoutmaster until I realized this is going to conflict. If I keep doing this, no girl is ever going to have sex with me in my life. And this is something I'm really, really looking forward to. You say, well, women are attracted to men in uniform, but not that uniform. And at that point, I kind of transitioned but at the same time, again, thinking about the complexity of, what technologically faced us. If you looked in the back of a TV, this monster tube, and thunk, 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 changing the channels. And I don't know about you, but we had one knob on an Admiral TV, and at a certain point, I remember turning it, and it came off in my hand, and I looked, and that plastic part had just worn completely out. And for some time before we got a new TV, it had a vice grip. Wonderful tool that you simply use to change the channel.
Right. Well, how about the rabbit ears, right? Yeah.
Hold it just like that. Don't move.
Right. And who got that job? My little sister, right? Right? Your little sister, right?
I love you. Stay right there for the show. I'll tell you what's happening. Wait.
This
Stop
is
the presses. What's going on?
Descending into this is either New Orleans. I think this is Pittsburgh. Yeah, this is Pittsburgh.
And of course, that is a fully articulated UFO to the upper right.
Yes, that's actually no. I don't think that is. That's a temperature gauge that's on the windshield.
Oh, I thought it was a suction cup to hold the.
Well, it could have been, but I don't really. Maybe a UFO. You know, I don't know.
That's what I'm going to refer to. And of course, you don't really remember it because they controlled your mind at that time.
Exactly. Now, this was Pittsburgh was really eye-opening because my friends took me to a point across the river, and you could see the three rivers, Allegheny, Monongahela, I forget the names, but all merging. And you could understand why Pittsburgh was a gateway to the Ohio Valley. This is a statue. Is it called Perspectives? I don't remember the name of the sculptor, of George Washington and one of the leaders of the Indians who met in the French and Indian War. Oh. This is when they met earlier. And later on, they would be combatants and enemies as the white man pushed westward.
Well, believe it or not, we are having our own version of kind of a missing time experience here in that we're coming into our last 2 minutes, and I'm just going to kind of move.
Okay, Lake Erie. Detroit.
Oh, my gosh.
Lake Erie. Okay. Detroit. That's the bad weather coming.
Oh, boy.
That's down in Detroit. The winds, you can see the wind.
Yeah.
All tied down. Kansas City. Coming into Kansas City. Oberlin, Kansas. I did not see a soul on the field. It was the scariest thing. I couldn't believe it. I didn't see one human.
How
it was scary. Outside my window of Longmont, Colorado, and Drake, Colorado, 8,000 feet in the Rockies. This is when I was climbing. I told you the story above to 13,000 feet. That was the clouds.
Oh, wow.
Getting above them. Now, here's somebody. This is a fellow who was the, I forget his name, but he was the manager of the Truth or Consequences. He was in the Navy. He had just retired and moved back home. He served on a ship, and I was telling him about Roswell. He said, they're here already. You should see what we're using in the Navy. I can't tell you, but we have weaponry and everything, and you're right.
How interesting.
That was cool. And Truth or Consequences started raining.
That's a nice shot.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Lake Butte. This is Elephant Butte Lake. This is the takeoff, my last day of flying.
Oh.
I left back. And this is now the final approach into Santa Monica Airport, my home base. And that's Captain Bob.
And this is the book, ladies and gentlemen. You can find it on Amazon, Vagabond Pilot, A Journey of Discovery and Renewal. Bob, our time has flown by, and it is really wonderful to be reconnected with you. And thank you so much for taking the time to share this story with us. I hope our readers and listeners will read your book. I'm really looking forward to it, and now all the more so.
Well, I want to thank you so much, Peter, for having me. It's wonderful to see your old friendly face, my neighbor.
And back at you, my brother.
Take good care. And you said make sure you tell Paul that I won't forget all those passes I never got. And Alex, send my very best.
I will count on it. And
be well. God bless.
You too. Peter Robbins here with my special guest tonight, Robert Young. Meanwhile, here on Earth, we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye now.